Hello, fiction writers! Today I want to close the topic of where writers gain their inspiration and how they decide what they want to write from the perspective of Jungian psychology. In the last two videos, we talked about the extroverted intuition vision, and then we talked about what writers pay attention to and how that affects the way our memory works. The last two videos are important for this one, so just in case you haven't watched them, I'll give you a brief recap. If you pay more attention to your internal experience, especially whether you're hungry or tired, but also whether you're sad, angry, nervous, or whether you enjoy something, and you remember what you yourself were doing more than what others were doing, then you are likely an introverted sensing user. However, if you pay more attention to your environment and the people in it, and you have a much easier time remembering other people's experiences, what they were saying and doing, than you do your own experience and what you were doing, then you are likely an extroverted sensing user. Today we are going to talk about the Introverted Intuition vision, or NI vision. Next, I will say a few words about how introverted sensing and extroverted sensing work to acquire the skill to craft the extroverted intuition or introverted intuition vision. And finally, we'll talk about how the introverted intuition vision compares to the extroverted intuition vision in fiction writers. So first of all, what is introverted intuition? Introverted intuition is one thing in general: willpower. Not endurance, but willpower. That's why I picked a heart breaking through a wall to illustrate this cognitive function. If you, for instance, were to ask a child with introverted intuition why it wants something, it can't really give you a justification. Introverted intuition users just want. NI is the fire of desire. For comparison, introverted sensing is what you need. With introverted intuition, you might want something whilst ignoring your needs. Like, for instance, not realizing that you cut yourself while you keep on working, or working throughout the night without realizing that you are tired, or eating without realizing that you are not hungry anymore.
It gets so bad toward the last few weeks of I'll get up in the morning and I'll forget for like 3 days. I won't shave. I won't shower. I think I showered yesterday, but I haven't. I pull on a baseball cap. What does everybody in the house call it? Troll mode is what she calls it. And I probably pretty much look like a troll by the end of that, but I get so caught up in it, I just want to get back to it with no interruption when I'm right at the end.
Introverted intuition expresses itself only through wanting. But how does NI decide what it wants? That is the question here. How does a writer with introverted intuition decide what they want to write? So we know that extroverted sensing gathers the input from the physical environment. People having experiences, things having experiences like animals, but also objects or places. At the example of people having experiences, you could be observing someone being in love. You observe someone getting attention because they own an awesome car, or you observe someone having a dog. You see someone on a vacation photo having a really awesome time on that vacation. And for each idea, your introverted intuition decides, I want this or I don't want this. Introverted intuition constantly processes the inputs that you gather from your extroverted sensing. So if you're a writer who is an introverted intuition user, you would look at the things that are happening in your environment, or in a movie or a show or on the news, stuff you hear in a story, and your introverted intuition would decide whether this is an idea that you want to turn into a story. That leads to a desire. And that desire, like I said, is like a fire that's in your heart. When you have a desire for an idea, what you do next, whether you sit down and write or you keep working on the idea in your mind, one thing remains consistent, and that is the impulsiveness behind it, the urge to do something with the idea. NI users lack NE, so they naturally have a harder time predicting future outcomes. It goes without saying that you become more willing to take risks if you are less aware of those risks. Let's listen to Catherine M. Valente, how she describes a moment when she experienced that impulse of desire.
And somehow Catherine found this man who spoke ancient Greek. And he read the first 15 lines of each book in ancient Greek in dactylic hexameter. I'd never heard anything like it in my whole life. It was so beautiful. And it's like seeing the girl of your dreams. Like, I gotta have her. Like, I gotta have that. I want that. And it was one of the most moving, like, group theatrical, poetic experiences I've ever had. And it was so moving and amazing. And I changed my major right then. And I went to San Diego and I started learning Greek. And the next year we did the Odyssey and I read the Greek.
In her case, the desire is directed toward the performance that she witnessed. She sees that skill that someone has, and she desires having that same skill, so she could perform the same way. She desired having a capability speaking Greek. Some NI users might experience a mix of impulsiveness and a hesitance to commit to an idea. And this is because they know that every commitment leads to obligations. If you have a very impulsive nature, then you might be afraid to fully commit to your idea right away. Because what if you see something else tomorrow that will make you feel an even stronger desire? On the other hand, you have the issue with instant gratification. This is the mechanic behind short-term sale offers. When you have an item that is basically for a smaller price but only for a couple of days. Introverted intuition users are susceptible to that because they do not want to lose the option, the freedom of choice. They have the option to buy it at a smaller price now, but they won't have the option in the future. So that is why they experience this urge, this FOMO, the fear of missing out. They experience this very strongly and they are incentivized to buy something even though they might not even want it. But they are afraid of losing the choice of buying it at a small price. They're afraid of losing that choice in the future, so they have the incentive to buy it now. And that is instant gratification. Some types are constantly between instant gratification and the fear of commitment. Now we are going to talk about skill, the skill to write. What exactly motivates you to actually learn writing advice and improve your skill as a writer? What cognitive functions are responsible for that? But before we do that, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and maybe leave a comment below. It really helps with the algorithm. Essentially, if you are an introverted intuition user, then it is your extroverted sensing that concerns your ability to make your introverted intuition desire happen. Here we have a ball rolling over a pool table. The SINE user makes prophecies. They know data like, for instance, the ball's trajectory and velocity, so they can predict where the ball will go. A better explanation would be that the SINE user has watched the ball roll a lot of times before, and they remember where it has ended up in the past, so now they can predict where it is going to end up in the present. The NISE user, however, with their introverted intuition, imagines the ball goes somewhere completely different, somewhere new, and they want the ball to go there. And using their extroverted sensing, they now impact the physical environment in the hopes that the imagined future will happen. So extroverted sensing isn't just your input, it is also what you use to interact with your environment. And in a very real sense, it is responsible for crafting that vision. It is how you remove obstacles that stand in the way of you and your vision. If your vision is an idea for a story, extroverted sensing is the skill that you need to create that story. The same is true for researching writing advice and preparing outlines, practicing your prose, and everything else that concerns your writing. If your vision is a painting, then extroverted sensing is your skill to actually create the painting, but it is also your logistics to actually get the materials you need in order to paint the painting. With SE, you basically manipulate the physical environment by hitting the keys on your keyboard, and that leads to the manifestation of your vision. That is why sometimes we see extroverted sensing users write with pen and paper or a typewriter, so they have that feeling, that sense that they are crafting a piece of art. Extroverted sensing is all about how the story is presented, how the sentences flow, how the prose sounds. We already discussed this in the second video, which is all about performance. Hypothetically, if someone were to prevent you to pursue your desire, SE is what you use to regain your freedom, by removing obstacles, but also by giving people a bad experience so that they remember not to take away your freedom. SE is what makes your vision presentable, but also what removes obstacles and enables your vision to come true. SINE users also have the incentive to acquire skills and learn about writing, but they aim more at increasing the desirability of their story. So if you're not sure whether you are an SINE user or an SENI user, try to figure out what your primary intention is. SINE is about asking what others want and then placing effort into figuring out techniques and systems and acquiring skills to please those desires. other people's desires and how to make your own stories more desirable to the introverted intuition of other people. Extroverted intuition users are people pleasers. They sense someone's NI desire and immediately want to accommodate that. For instance, let's look at Rebecca Yarros. Yarros is a master in utilizing systems to maximize the entertainment value and thus the desirability of her stories. Just read the first 2 chapters of Fourth Wing. They are a masterclass in how to set up and pay off something. They are really well done in a technical sense. However, listen to that clip of how she describes how she got the idea for Fourth Wing.
So when I knew my publisher was going to do a romantic fantasy line, I got really excited and I submitted 5 ideas. And so she went through those and kind of looked where there was a hole in the market, where there weren't anything. And she said, we're going to go with the dragons. And it was pitch number 3. So I had this moment of like, dragons? Are you sure?
The publisher chose that she was going to write Fourth Wing. In other words, Rebecca Yarros is not uncomfortable with giving up certain freedoms and executing other people's desires. Imagine her publisher chose that she was going to write something completely different. Then Fourth Wing, a book that enjoys tremendous success and single-handedly changed the market, would have never happened. Now, let's briefly compare the NI vision to the NE vision. In the last video, I talked about how introverted sensing sits back and observes, and extroverted intuition imagines various scenarios. It is like walking through many doors and testing whether you enjoy what is behind those doors. Here is an example of J.J. Abrams leading with his SI palette.
I didn't really necessarily have in my head that there would be a monster, although I think I had the thought that there would be some intrigue that they would sort of stumble upon, in a kind of, blow out sort of way, where it's like there's something, that they see that they something where they're in over their heads.
What he is describing is not a clear NI vision. He is not describing something that he wants to craft, but he is describing the effect the scene or story is supposed to have on the moviegoer. And he is using his own SI palette as a guidance for what feeling he wishes to evoke. And then he starts rifling through scenarios to pick the one that evokes this feeling the most. He essentially says, it should give me the experience of watching intrigue, and I should be getting a sense of the characters getting sucked into something where they're in over their heads. Alright, that's it. I know we're still talking a lot about Jungian psychology, not a lot about writing, but we still have to get through a lot of these cognitive functions. We still have to get through a lot of the basics, but I promise it is going to be worth it. Next video is going to be the last in the realm of the perception functions, where we are going to talk about world building and how extroverted intuition and extroverted sensing have very different approaches to world building, but also to scene descriptions. I hope I'll see you in that video.